2008 or 2009, I stumbled upon the writings of a rabbi called Rabbi Yitzchak Abadi. Abadi, A-B-A-D-I. Not Rabbi Ovadia. Sounds close, but not the same. Rabbi Abadi. Some of you may have asked me questions in the past, and I've referred you to kashrut.org, Rabbi Abadi's website. Rabbi Abadi is a posek from Lakewood, New Jersey. A big student of Rabbi Aaron Kotler, and though he's many years his senior, he's also the chavruta of Rabbi Gabriel Cohen from Los Angeles. I don't know Rabbi Abadi, never met Rabbi Abadi, but when I discovered him, I discovered a genre of Torah that is very similar to that of Rabbi Peretz. Not the same, not at all the same, but very similar. In what sense? A certain commitment to Halacha, a disregard for what other people have to say, including those who always want to talk about customs and customs and customs, and a dedication to the discovering the truth in every area of Halacha, even if that truth is not Sephardic or Ashkenazi or whatever the truth is, that's what the Halacha is going to be like. Problem is, to get a track of Rabbi Abadi is very difficult. He was a posek in Lakewood. I told you, of Aaron Kotler, who's like the father of all the yeshivot in America, the Lithuanian yeshivot. He made him the posek of the yeshiva, of the Lakewood yeshiva. And even though Rabbi Abadi was not mainstream Lithuanian when it came to halachot, he was the accepted posek in Lakewood. Seems like when Rav Aaron Kotler passed away, there were powers that be in the yeshiva that didn't like him very much. It could be that there was a rabbi who was less senior but needed the whatever the politics were. And Rabbi Abadi's life became increasingly difficult, and he ended up deciding to move to Israel a number of years ago. He lived in Israel for the last number of years, and as I heard recently, he just moved back to Lakewood. Why? I don't know the story, but I know that finding his books has been very difficult for me. They don't sell them in bookstores. Anyone who used to sell them doesn't sell them anymore. They're out of print. And so I resigned myself to only being able to read Rabbi Abadi's writings through his children. His children run a website that he'll do, kashrut.org, where you can ask them halakha questions, and they answer them. Mostly in kashrut, that's the name of the website. Their expertise is, Rabbi Abadi's opinion, like our opinion, is that most foods that don't have sensitive ingredients like meat or fish or dairy, cheese, you can read the ingredients on the label and know if they're kosher or not. And you have to be an expert in both halacha and ingredients to be able to do that, and the process that things are used to make things, which his sons are. And then you can ask some questions and they answer them. I'll tell you just off the record. There are about 4 things I don't agree with Rabbi Abadi about in areas of kashrut, and if you're going to use the website, you should know about them. Now, first and foremost, I don't agree with Rabbi Abadi regarding his policy on grape juice. He holds that grape juice pasteurization is considered bishul. We are not that lenient, and therefore, it's not that he's wrong. He has many opinions he relies on for that. But if he says something that has grape juice ingredients is kosher, I personally wouldn't have it. Second, he has an interesting policy regarding certain cheeses. That certain cheeses are kosher, even though they don't have a hechsher. I don't have a Kabbalah from my rabbi that he's correct in that regard. Could be he is, but I didn't hear yet from Rabbi Peretz. So regarding cheeses, Rabbi Abadi, you may notice in my book I mentioned oats. Remember I wrote about oats something? I said oats may not be one of the 5 grains that are prohibited on Pesach. I said that is to be strict, meaning in order to fulfill your mitzvah of matzah, you have to have matzah from one of the 5 grains. These gluten-free matzot that are floating around that are made out of potatoes are not matzot. They look like matzot, but you don't get a mitzvah of matzah from eating those potatoes. There are many oat matzot, which many people have gluten intolerance. They can deal with oat that doesn't have gluten in it. According to me, I would say let's not have oat matzot because there's a doubt. It's a doubt whether or not oat is one of the 5 grains. Rabbi Abadi publicly changed his mind about a year and a half ago, but he used to publicly allow people to eat oats on Pesach. Oatmeal, oat cookies, oat bread, because he's so confident that it's not one of the 5 grains. I don't have such a Kabbalah from Rabbi Peretz. There are such minor details, but the rest of what Rabbi Abadi writes is absolutely in sync with what we teach Halacha here. So why am I mentioning it to you? Because just last week I discovered that there's a YU Sfarim sale. They sell books at YU once a year, but if you want books at a good price, it's a place to go. You can go to yusfarimsale.com or something like that. They sell many books that are not available throughout the year, Hebrew and English books. And in the Hebrew book section, I see that they have Rabbi Abadi's question and answer books. Albeit for about twice the price you would pay if you were buying it from probably Rabbi Abadi himself. But I ordered both, and I got both, Baruch Hashem, last week, and I have not stopped reading them since. These are both the books right here. Brilliant Talmid Chacham. Brilliant. Not just brilliant, there are many brilliant people in the world. He has a lot of HaShamayim. You see from the way he writes it, he really feels close to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And when he says things, it's not to be modern, it's not to be lenient, it's not to be liberal, it's to be very, very close to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And when, for example, I was talking to my wife today, I'm seeing now more and more in the Orthodox Jewish social media, women rabbis, women leaders, and I'm not against that capacity per se. Our community very much operates with, many communities have a vocal rabbi and a very silent rabbinit. Our community, Baruch Hashem, I believe that we split the job 50-50. I'm not against women being in public positions. But sometimes you see that the same woman who became a leader of a community also spent her whole PhD career writing articles disproving halachot and calling them archaic and so I don't trust you anymore. I mean, if you were a woman rabbi who was tznu'ah and you followed the halachot that we always followed it, and you were just a leader, so I would say, listen, how can I judge how sincere you are? I can't. But when you come and start to shake the whole boat and everything is up in air, I can't trust you anymore. I wouldn't trust you if you're a man. I wouldn't trust you if you're anybody. Rabbi Badi doesn't come to shake the boat. He comes to just learn halacha in a different way than other people do, with a lot of yirat shamayim.
Does he have his own symbol?
Not a kasher symbol. No. They've asked him about it many times, but I don't think so.
Rabbi, did Rabbi Shlomo Riskin just appoint a successor who was a woman?
Could be. A point in case, by the way. Yeah. I like Rabbi Riskin, but he's out there when it comes to certain halachot. And it's because of that makes people wary to trust him. Right. There are other rabbis who said things more radical than him, but they're not so... They're more reliable. Not that Rabbi Riskin is not reliable, but other people view them as more reliable. Rabbi Riskin is the chief rabbi of a whole city. He's not a small person. A big Talmid Chacham. When I met him, I kissed his hand. He was a big Talmid Chacham. I wanted to take you into the book to Rabbi Abadi because it has something to do with what we spoke about last week. And what we're going to speak about as soon as we finish this. For Pesach, I think it's very important to see. And Zev, we have one more copy for you, so you are just in time.
Family issues.
Hopefully they're all solved now.
Well, it's in the middle still.
Okay. So, Rabbi Abadi, we're talking about Rabbi Yitzchak Abadi from Lakewood. This is 2 photocopies from his books. I just found them recently over Shabbat, and I'm so excited about them that I had to share them with you.
Whose books?
Rabbi Abadi, Rabbi Yitzchak Abadi. I don't know if I ever mentioned them to you. That website I showed you. So I finally got his books, Baruch Hashem. So, let's start on this side of the page. It looks like this. Reish Aleph. The style of this book it's a question and answer book, like many other halachic works. It's not a running commentary on Shulchan Aruch. It's not a list of things you can or cannot do. The question here is a very interesting question.
With microphone.
What?
Took microphone.
Oh, the microphone.
Without the mic.
Vaughn, can I have a tissue box at the table, please?
Yeah, sure.
Thank you. The question is as follows. When you buy metal utensils at a store, before you use those metal utensils, you must tovel them. You must put them in a mikvah. Mikvah, a lake, an ocean, a river, something that's kosher to tovel things in. Not a swimming pool, not your bathtub. Someone told me they do it in their bathtub. Not your fish tank. A mikvah.
Not the toilet bowl.
Yeah, except Is
Is that what you've been doing?
I'm never eating any of that again. So,
Thank God my wife takes care of the kosher utensils.
I'm not catching you anymore.
so the question is, what about glass utensils? The Torah doesn't mention glass utensils. The Torah mentions you have to tovel metal utensils. Our rabbis say that glass utensils also have to be toveled. The reason is metal utensils can be melted down and reshaped, and the rabbis extend that to glass, which can be melted down and reshaped. The question is, what about plastic when it was invented? Plastic can be melted down and reshaped. The Igrot Moshe, Rabbi Moshe Feinstein writes, listen, it's bad enough that we have to tovel glass, when the Torah doesn't say so. It says there's a rule, and I wish that we would put this rule in every Bet Knesset in the world. The rule is in Halacha, the Talmud tells us, En anachnu, we do not, gozrim gzerot, make new decrees midatenu, on our own. If it's not mentioned already in the Talmud, we don't make up new stringencies that didn't exist before.
It happens a lot.
This is a real halakha, though. It's in the books of halakha. We don't make up new halachot.
So
They're
in
all
order
over
to
the
say
place.
that, whom are we relying on?
What do you mean?
This phrase. That we
The
not
Talmud.
invent-
The Talmud. Yeah.
We're not invent.
The idea is, let's say our rabbis tell us that you can't do X because it might lead you to do Y. So you don't then say that everything that might lead you to do Y is prohibited. Our rabbis said this and this. That's not. For example, I'll give you a great example. Yom Kippur. Yom Kippur, you're not allowed to wear leather shoes because,
It's a sign of rejoicing. You're supposed to collect yourself.
well, why supposedly leather shoes?
It's a sign of wealth.
Well, you've
Comfort.
taken an animal's life.
Comfort. Leather shoes are much more comfortable than
Not
Uh,
Oh, they probably would.
wooden shoes. But today, many people would argue that your leather shoes are much less comfortable than, let's say, your tennis shoes, your sneakers, or whatever else you're wearing.
Flippers. Yeah, people come with slippers.
With slippers, right? So the question is, so what do I do about shoes? Maybe I should say, so definitely you can't wear leather shoes, because our rabbis already said no. But maybe I should say that people can't wear Crocs, they can't wear comfortable slippers, they can't wear... Or do I just say, listen, our rabbi said leather, what can I do? So even though the Mishnah Berurah wants to suggest people should maybe go barefoot on Yom Kippur, the Halacha says, Ein anachnu gozlim gzerot midaten. Our rabbi said leather, we don't already add more categories to
You
this.
can't really be in a shul barefoot, though, would you?
With socks.
With socks, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Meaning we can't...
That's what I have.
That's it, right. The whole idea is we don't make up new halachot unless there's a very compelling reason why we have to.
And even then, you have to have a lot of consensus.
Yes, and then even if you have consensus, you also have to know that your words are not final. There could be someone that's going to challenge your authority to make a new halachot.
But it could be like building a fence around the whole thing.
Right. So the question is, who has the permission to build a fence? Has that generation already passed?
It has.
Oh, it's a debate. That's
Yeah.
part of the debate.
But can't a posek make one up for a specific situation, for a specific community?
Perhaps, as long as he doesn't sell it or market it as actual halacha. Because it's very clear we don't do this only because we're afraid of something else, not because it's forbidden. The danger with that is that now you're being strict here, but let's say you see someone else who doesn't do it, you're not going to eat in his house, or your kid's going to make fun of his kid at school, or whatever it's going to be, and then, so what did you gain by adding a fence when you violated a blatant prohibition? Everything has to be weighed in a balance. So the question here is as follows. What if I buy an aluminum pan, a disposable pan? You're going to throw it away tomorrow after you use it. Do I have to tovel my aluminum pan in a mikvah?
I know the answer to this because we talked about it once. So I'll let them.
No, why not?
Because it's temporary.
It's temporary. We only immersed utensils. The definition of a utensil is something that's going to last you. Something that you're throwing away tomorrow is not considered a utensil. So listen to this question. What if I'm going to keep this tinfoil pan, the aluminum pan, for a few weeks? There are some people that reuse them. Hopefully not for a few weeks, but they reuse them. So there you really get into some sticky areas. Some rabbis would say tovelit because now you're making it a kli. Other rabbis would say you're throwing it away anyways. It's just a matter of time. Don't tovel it. Fine.
Was it about even with new
Plastic we don't tovel at all.
Even with new utensils, can't you use them once before you?
Oh, Zev, just ding, 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 ding.
Do I get 50 points?
No, you want to pretend that you don't know that. I'm going to read to you this question. Look on page Reish Aleph, right here. Do you have it? Is that an extra one over here?
I gather we're not doing the Shulchan Aruch.
We're going to get there. We're going to get there. This is an introduction to the introduction.
Yeah, I mean,
Keep you in suspense.
my hip ears not so good, but
They asked Rabbi Abadi, Ha'im, yesh lismoch al minhag ha'olam. Can we rely on the custom of the world, meaning the custom of what people have? Lishtamesh be'ofen chad pa'ami, to use a utensil only once. Bekelim regilim, normal utensils, not disposable utensils. V'achar kach latbilam. And then immerse them. Kagon, for example, shekashe lo latbilam mata, because it's hard for you to tovel them now, or mikol siba acheret, or for any other reason. Meaning, some people have this custom where, okay, so I bought this cup, I'm going to go to the mikvah on Monday. I can use it now once because now it's kind of like that disposable utensil that I'm only using once.
Yeah, I bought it because I have guests coming and I need it right away.
There you go. So let's see what Rabbi Abadi answers. But Moshe Chaim and Zev don't want to be here right now. No. Tshuva, says Rabbi Abadi an answer. She'elazo, this question, machiva me'od, hurts me very much. V'chi kol davar she'eze anashim asu o osim nikra leze minhag. Says that everything that some people do, we're now going to call it a minhag, a custom, just because people do it. Ad she'achar kach, so much so that afterwards, when the rabbi wants to get rid of this custom that some people just randomly made up, the rabbi is to prove she'ino ken, that no, it's not actually a custom. The Halacha says differently. Sound familiar? It says Rabbi Abadi, so everything that people do, we're going to call it a custom, and now a rabbi wants to get rid of it, and they're going to tell him, you have to prove that this is not a custom. V'az yakpidu alav, they're going to get angry at him, v'yomar, and they're going to say, Ech ata mevatel minhagim. How are you getting rid of customs? Pam lechuma, sometimes you get rid of the strict customs. Pam lekula, sometimes you get rid of the lenient customs. It says, you're just destroying all the customs of the Jewish people. It says Rabbi Abadi, this halacha has no source in any book anywhere in the world.
That's the whole point.
And he says, and now you're telling me that, can I rely on them? Says Rabbi, your question is flawed. Just because people do something doesn't make it okay. Just because people do something doesn't make it a minhag. V'akol biglal, and it's all because she'eze anashim rekim u'pochzim. Maybe it's not good to translate that. Because some people who are empty and useless, shelo yudim afilu perek echad kilchato, they don't know even one chapter of halacha properly. V'halavai yedu parsha achad b'chumash, and I wish they would even know one parsha inside of the chumash. Tzoakim, they scream, minhag, minhag. No, not so long ago. Valken tafug Torah, and because of this, the Torah will disappear. V'chol ma shelomdim harabanim hamuvhakim, and that which all the expert rabbis study, kol shnotehem yomam v'layla, day and night, they're studying books of halacha. Ba'ez Adam is going to come one person, vatel divrehem b'mechi yad, he's going to wave his hand and get rid of those halachot. V'omar kacha minhag, he's going to say, this is our custom. V'chulam yasimu yad lepeh, and everyone is going to cover their mouth with their hand and say, oh, we do like the custom, not like what you studied in the halacha.
Well, a good point here would be like, those charts where you have halacha, source, min Torah, min rabbanim, minhagim, and everything has to have a source, otherwise it's unrooted.
Well, do you remember last week we mentioned about Ashkenazim, Sfaradim,
Yes.
the different minhagim regarding wearing tefillin?
Right.
That's a minhag, when I can take you back to the Talmud and show you this is where the customs developed. Customs are not in contradiction with halakha. There's simply different ways to interpret halakha. The problem is when people just make up customs. What do they make up? We don't know where they started. We don't know who started them. Sure, it could be there was a rabbi involved in the process. We don't know. But it goes against what we do as halacha. Right here, a person who would rely on this custom of the world, and I've heard many, many people, I've even seen rabbis tell people, that yeah, you can use something once without putting it in the mikveh first. What is your source? You're now making people violate a mitzvah from the Torah to tovel your dishes. Even though I brought that in my book, that using a utensil that's not toveled is a rabbinic prohibition, not a biblical prohibition. The Torah commands you to tovel them. The rabbis prohibit you from using it without it being toveled. Make sense? Mm-hmm. Okay, but let's keep going. I can repeat, sure. The Torah says you must tovel utensils. But what happens if I use a utensil that's not toveled? The Torah doesn't say it's prohibited.
Oh.
But our rabbis say it's prohibited.
Oh, good. So they're more like clarifying it.
Yes.
I just had a silly thought about it. That, the aluminum pan, since you're not going to, since it's temporary and you're going to throw it away, that someone would try to say, well, I don't know if I'm going to keep this pan or not. I'm going to try it out.
And then throw it out.
Yeah. Or return it.
It seems like there you would have poskim that would tell you it's not a subjective halakha. Even if you would keep that disposable pan, you still wouldn't tovel it because in its nature it's disposable. Objectively it's disposable. And just like you're going to throw away this real pen, it doesn't make a difference about you. This is a real pen. I mean, it's a good point. It's not subjective. It has nothing to do with you. Maybe this is what they intended in the Talmud and Shabbat, where they say that in the future, you won't have a halakha bura, a clear halakha, u'mishnah bura, or a clear mishnah in one place. The pshat in that Talmud is that you're going to reach a generation where halachot are not clear anymore. There's no clear way to learn. There's no clear way to observe halachot. Everyone's going to just, do their own thing. It says, maybe they intended to mean that everything goes today by customs, lo achar halacha, velo achar mishnah. It doesn't follow halacha, it doesn't follow the mishnah. Today people just follow their own customs.
Or they enforce customs on people, saying that you can't be Jewish unless you do all these.
That's also true. But here I'm hoping that people are not that brazen. What is he saying here?
You're a Bali Tshuva, but in a sense it's what happens.
It could happen.
You need to dress like this, you need to have this, you need to have their kitchen like this on Pesach, you need to have that. And boom, 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 pile it up with no explanation for any of it.
Well, it's always dangerous. It's always dangerous. By the way, here what Rabbi Badi is pointing out, you see those rabbis who spent their whole life studying halacha. Then somebody's going to come and say, minhag, minhag. How many times this happened in my life, in my rabbi's life, and other rabbis, I see them speak. Say, oh, that was so nice, but our custom is not like, what? So tell me what your custom is. If the Talmud says something, and the Rambam says something, and Shulchan Aruch says something, and the Ramah says something, and the Mishnah says something, so where does your custom have any basis? Who gave it the right to exist?
So are you obligated, this came up tonight actually in the class I was just in, are you obligated when somebody posts something that you ask for sources? Or do you just accept the word of the rabbi? Because the answer I was given is you accept the word of the rabbi.
Depends how unpopular you want to be.
What?
Depends how unpopular you want to be.
Well, you've heard "don't ask, don't tell" because one of those cases.
Well,
Here's the story. The story is how much do you trust the person who's questioning the
then you
answer.
should be asking the person.
Oh, very good.
Yeah.
Remember the whole story of don't ask a rabbi to give you a psak, because then if you don't want to follow it that way, you can ask another rabbi.
Yeah,
Why do you have two rabbis on your speed dial? It says in the Talmud, make for yourself one rabbi. One rabbi who you trust him, and that you go to the point, listen, when I call Rabbi Peretz up, I know that sometimes I'm not going to like the answer he gives me. But that's the whole point. The whole point is, for the 95% of times that I appreciate his logic, the 5% of times that I'm not convinced that it's accurate, not that he's wrong, God forbid. For me, it's just like, okay, it's a stretch, but I'm going to go with it because I trust the personality. If I just have to call some random rabbi in New York that gave me his phone, I don't know who he is. I don't know what his worldviews are. I don't know how he studies Halacha. I don't know where it comes from. So there's another side of this coin. The question is, you're asking a question from the asker's perspective. What about from the answerer's perspective? The question is, does a rabbi, when he gives a halachic ruling, does he teach the people the reason behind his answer? Many rabbis are of the opinion, no, you don't.
Yeah.
The reason is so that people will come back and ask you more questions. Because let's say he tells him, oh, it's okay, but it's like the famous lady who came to ask the rabbi, some milk fell into my chicken soup. Is it kosher? The rabbi says, of course it's kosher. And then for a year he doesn't see the lady anymore. So what happened to you? He says, well, ever since you gave me that new recipe for chicken soup, I do it every week, right? It's dangerous to explain to a person why. Let's just say, no, yes. Give them a very vague answer. That way they come back and ask again. Empowering someone also takes trust. To be able to give someone the formula to decide something, you need trust in two things. One, that you know how to explain it properly, and that they know how to receive it properly and use it properly. Some people ask me a halacha question, and my opinion is not the answer that I'm going to give them. I'll tell them, your local Orthodox rabbi will tell you it's not okay. Because I don't trust the person with the answer that I have to give them. Is that fair? I don't know. That's the way the world works.
Well, that's related to a question of whether you should be lenient or strict in something, and actually had to do whether you were celebrating Yonatan for 1 or 2 days, whether you're visiting another place, like Israel. So the answer that we got was that if the ruling originally was lenient, you are allowed to go to another rabbi and ask to get a more strict one.
Who will do that?
That is beside the point. But the opposite is not the case.
In the town where the Vilna Gaon, in the town, I just saw Rabbi Abadi bring a story.
This is not film.
In the town where the Vilna Gaon lived, in Vilna, the Vilna Gaon had an interesting question that came up. A lady had sent her chicken. They checked on chicken Erev Shabbat. They weren't sure if it was kosher. They sent to Vilna Gaon, is the chicken kosher? And the Vilna Gaon said, it's not kosher. Meanwhile, the lady didn't know that someone else in the family had taken the chicken to the rabbi of Vilna. The Vilna Gaon was not the rabbi of Vilna. He was a rabbi in Vilna. The rabbi in Vilna's name was Rav Shmuel, or Rav Shlomo. Rav Shmuel of Vilna? Rav Shmuel. And he ruled the chicken was kosher. Now the lady has two answers. She doesn't know what she's supposed to do. So she goes back to Rav Shmuel of Vilna and says, what should I do? You're the Rav. What happens now? He says, don't worry, tonight, prepare your table for 2 extra seats. I'm coming along with the Vilna Gaon, and we're both going to eat your chicken.
Yeah.
He said, but the Vilna Gaon holds it's not kosher. He said, but I'm the Rav in this town, and I'm the one who makes decisions whether something is kosher or not. And he told the Vilna Gaon, and the Vilna Gaon accepted. He said, even though the Vilna Gaon is famous, with that we quote him a lot, right? He said, even though he still believed he was correct, the other rabbi was the Rav of the town, and therefore he has an obligation to give in to him. And they came to the house to eat, and as they were serving the chicken, one of the candles, which were made out of not kosher animal fat, fell into the pot of chicken, and the whole pot became not kosher.
Yeah, right on time.
And so Rav Aaron Cutler used to say, HaShamayim brought this story to happen to save the Vilna Gaon from having to eat something he didn't want to eat. But obviously the story was correct, that the Vilna Gaon had to give in and follow the halacha of the rabbi of the town. So there is a certain weight to Amar Da'atra, the rabbi of a place, of a community, of a synagogue.
Got a lot of competition here.
It's okay. We like what he says.
Time.
So what failed?
The candles.
The candle.
The candle.
Yeah. Now I'll let you know. It's not okay where in a community that there's a rabbi, there are people who are stricter than the rabbi.
Yeah.
It's not an okay. For example, in my community, I let people do whatever they want. But in a community, there's a rav. It's not okay to do things like prohibit things that the rabbi of the community doesn't prohibit. It's a lack of halachic protocol. That's why it says, Rabbi Abadi, Oy lanu ma she'ala lanu b'dorenu. Woe to us what has happened to our generation. V'arei nitrabu b'dor hazeh yeshivot v'talmidim. Says today we have very large amounts of yeshivot and yeshiva students. V'af al piken, and even though we have so many Torah learners, adayin en anachnu nishanim ela minagim. We still only rely on the customs, not on halacha. He says, "Ve'inaiti tzarich la'arich b'zeh." I should have written much more about this topic. U'la'avi kol minei minhagim shem hefech halacha ve'en potzeh peh v'mitzatzeh. Then I could bring here a list of many customs that go against halacha, and nobody says anything about them. V'hayodim b'zeh samim machsom lepihem. He says, and many of us who know we cover our mouths and don't speak about those customs that go against halacha. Ki od me'at v'sakluhu, because very shortly after we say such things, they will come and stone us. They're afraid. So we're afraid from people. Because if we go against customs, they'll come and attack you physically. God willing, there will come a time where I will write such a list. Let's skip this parentheses. The last sentence. And so regarding the actual halacha, you tovel a dish first before you use it. And it's obvious that it's prohibited to use it once before you tovel it. It's a halacha. So why did he go so long about the customs? To show you, it's a classic case. You're asking the rabbi a question based on the custom which has no basis. It's not a custom you can say like, oh, certain Hasidim have this custom, or certain Sfaradim have this custom. This is just nobody's custom. It's something that they started on the street and comes from the street. After I saw this letter, not so many pages after this, I came across a second letter from Rabbi Buddy, which is even more severe than this letter. And I thought that Pesach is in the air. You have to have. I give you a copy so you can have a copy of these letters. Keep them in your back pocket somewhere. You're going to need them if it's a wife, if it's a speaker, or something like that. Reish Yud Gimel. It's from a different page. You see the title of this chapter? Yeah, regarding minhagim. This whole piece is about 5 pages in the original, where Rabbi Abadi goes through numerous customs that are against Halacha. He actually ended up making this list. I guess he wasn't afraid of being stoned anymore. He mentions here, for example, that many Sfaradim don't eat hummus on Pesach because hummus sounds like chametz.
Right.
Like he mentioned that there are Ashkenazim who don't eat carrots, and my wife doesn't agree with this, but he says that carrots in Yiddish are called merin, and merin means to add, so they were afraid that people are going to add yeast to dough and make it rise. Okay. He said many things like this. He said, so these people, he says to them, they won't eat hummus on Pesach, but they'll go to mixed dancing events. He said, because this one is a custom, minhag. The other one is a biblical prohibition, but they don't care. That was his.
No carrots for you on Pesach. Okay. Now that you're
But I think Ashkenazim, isn't tzimmis a traditional Pesach food? Or is that Rosh Hashanah?
What?
Tzimmis.
Simmons?
Tzimmis.
Yeah,
They don't eat carrots?
I believe the bells of Hasidim don't eat carrots.
Yeah?
Wow.
I was once in an Ashkenazi house, Pesach, and they had carrots with raisins. It was like a tzimmis, but on Pesach.
Chicken fat and
Not raisins. No.
Prunes, maybe?
No.
Prunes, no.
Cinnamon.
Cinnamon. It was brown. I know that I didn't touch them.
Cinnamon?
They didn't look like Moroccan carrots, I can tell you that much. The poor carrot was never born to be sweet. So,
They didn't look like keepers on the gefilte fish.
I was once at someone's house, and I had the carrot from the gefilte fish. Just I would like taste, and it seems like they boiled the carrot in sugar. I don't know what they did to the carrot, but it was definitely Hashem didn't grow it that way. So, Reish Yud Gimel. Binyanei Hamin Hagim, regarding customs. So we're going to do the first 3 paragraphs, and the rest is already part of his long letter. Katav Hamchaber here, Rabbi Abani grew up in Lakewood. So he writes like an Ashkenazi, not like a Sephardic person, even though he's Sephardic. Mechaber is the way the Ashkenazim call Maran. Maran for us means our master, but for the Ashkenazim he's not their master. HaMechaber is the author of the Shulchan Aruch. So writes Maran, and he's quoting, direct quote from the Shulchan Aruch.
What's he called? The Ramah?
The Ramah, he calls it.
Oh, he doesn't say...
No. Like if you ask an Ashkenazi rabbi learning Shulchan Aruch, they say you learn Mechaber and Ramah. That's what they'll say. Yeah. I don't know who deserves the title Maran by the Ashkenazim. I don't know who they get.
That's what I was wondering, if the Ramah is...
Dvarim hamutarim, things which are permitted, halachically they're permitted. V'hayodim behem shehem mutarim, and people who know that they are permitted. Nahagu behem isur, they accustom themselves not to eat them, meaning they prohibit them on themselves, but they know that it's really allowed.
they will soon forget that.
Havi ki'ilu, it's as if kiblu alehem beneder, that they've accepted this upon themselves as an oath, as a vow. Ve'asur la'atiram lahem, and you are not allowed to annul their vow and allow them to eat those foods. Classic case, Pesach, tell me. Do any Ashkenazim believe that it's prohibited to eat rice on Pesach?
No.
No, and not anyone worth their salt. They know it's allowed, but they don't have... So this is the source, because they know it's allowed, but they themselves choose not to eat it, you are not allowed to come and permit this to them, halacha. Aval, but hanohagim isu, those who accustom themselves to be, those who prohibit something on themselves, bidvarim hamutarim, even though they're permitted, machmat shesavrim shemasurim, and they hold that they must be prohibited. I mean, they don't know that it's permitted and they prohibit it. Rather, they just think it's prohibited. Let's say someone thinks that potatoes are not kosher. Their whole life they think potatoes are not kosher. And then someone tells them, yeah, potatoes are okay. Are they allowed to eat potatoes?
Yes.
Yeah, because they didn't know about it and then prohibit it from themselves.
Part of the Seder.
Lo havi kilu kiblum beneder. It's not considered that they've accepted them as an oath or a vow on themselves.
Well, apparently, potatoes, according to Rabbi, only were considered chametz.
Kitniot, once upon a time. Potatoes were kitniot. And it's very
It's
important.
really part of a Seder. It's
Because some rabbis took back their opinion about it.
Uh-huh.
Because potatoes can be made into flour. That's one of the reasons why you prohibit them as kitniot. So many Ashkenazim did not
Well,
use.
so can rice.
That's why. I mean, some opinions say the reason why kitniot are prohibited is anything that you could turn into flour.
Interesting.
Corn, rice, beans.
Beans, yeah.
I guess.
You might just...
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, garbanzo.
I once had a friend who was Indian, and they had like cookies and things and candies, all kinds of made out of bean flour.
It's very common.
Yeah.
So
So
papadums. They're like little flat. They're chickpea ones. Well, you know better than me.
so here, you see, let's say someone's about tshuva. They are newly observant. They come into the community and they teach them rice is not allowed on Pesach. At a certain point, even though this person's been doing it for 20 years, could they change their mind?
Well, for health reasons, they could.
Let's put aside health reasons for a second.
I know some
What do you mean?
Ashkenazim
Can you
did.
change just like that?
Can they now start eating rice on
You
Pesach?
mean just because it's more convenient?
Yeah, they want to. They just found out. Someone came to the community and said it's
They
okay.
said it's okay.
A Torah.
No,
Oh,
they can't. They can't
have to
go
have a Torah
against their
Nedarim.
tradition.
Well, here, what the Shulchan Aruch is saying, let's put aside Ashkenazi Sephardi. I'm just talking about in general. According to this, so long as they didn't know that it was permitted and just people prohibited it by themselves, they thought it was actually not allowed, they're allowed to go back and change their custom. And this is not just with food, this is regarding anything in the world that people don't do, even though you're allowed to do it. If you know that you're allowed to do it and you choose not to do it, you're stuck. But if you don't know that it's allowed and you were taught that you're not allowed to,
Ignorance is bliss.
No, it's not.
it's not bliss.
Well, I mean,
If you like rice.
It's a sad state of being, but... Okay, so now Rabbi Bali quotes Shulchan Aruch, he wants to explain. Amarti said, I came here levaer k'tzat inyanei haminhagim. I came to explain some customs. Matai yesh laminhag ikar, when a minhag is a good minhag, a strong minhag. Umaza shamu, and what does it mean where it says in the Talmud, Yerushalmi, minhag mevatel halacha. That a minhag can get rid of a halacha. The Odins, furthermore, yesh shamu, some say sha'af bimkom isur haminhag uker halacha. That, you see, it's one thing if the minhag is stricter. It makes you more strict. What if the minhag is more lenient? So some people say that even when it's prohibited, the minhag allows you to break a halacha. Heim yesh mamash b'divrehem. I want to understand if there's any truth to their words. V'chein matzinu kama v'chama pa'amim. We've seen many places. Shaminhag mishtaneh medor ledor. The custom changes in every generation. So what is really the strength of a custom? If I could prove to you that about 200 years ago, rabbis held that potatoes were kitniot, so what changed today that allows you to have potato be kitniot? If I could prove to you that 50 years ago, rabbis believed that peanuts were not kitniot, what changed today that people don't eat peanuts on Pesach? If I could, this is the question. If I can prove to you that 50 years ago, Sfaradim, in the middle of their prayers, interrupted with songs, so what changed today that Sfaradim refused to do this because they claim it's their custom not to do it? When I can, 50 years ago, Kiyudin. When I could prove to you that 50 years ago Sfaradim did do this. That was part of our custom. So listen to what Rabbi says. And you have to love the sarcasm, and with this we'll learn Halacha Bra. Zechurani said, I recall, Lifnei Harbe Zman, a long time ago, Yashavti b'seuda im achirim. I was sitting at a meal with other people. It's Halacha and the Shulchan Aruch, in the laws of Derech Eretz. Quotes the Talmud. The Talmud says that the Nikiyei Hadat b'Yerushalayim, the clear-minded people of Jerusalem, the Torah scholars, they wouldn't accept an invitation to a meal unless they knew who was eating there with them. That way they wouldn't be spending a meal with drunkards or with, vile people or filthy people or disrespectful people. They wanted to know who's coming. I tell people this all the time. If someone invites you for dinner, you're allowed to ask who else is invited. And if you know the conversation on Shabbat dinner the whole night is going to be about movies and baseball games and that, don't go. Choose a different week. They're nice friends. Next week. So we like to come at a different week. When you invite somebody from the Kollel who doesn't talk about things like that in Shabbat, right? You can ask something like that. So says Rabbi Abadish, I was sitting at this dinner table, and then he writes in parentheses, V'ulai, maybe, avarti al minhag anshei Yerushalayim, I violated this custom of the Jews from Jerusalem, shelo hayu mesubim mesuda, that they wouldn't come to a meal, elim ken yadui mihem mesubin, until they knew who they were going to eat with. Rabbi Abadish is saying, I regret being at this dinner table. Ukshiviu kinuach seuda, when they brought the dessert at the end of the meal, livsof, and the blessing on the dessert was shakol, ice cream, let's say. Some of the people sitting there said, oh, do you make a blessing on dessert? Do you not make a blessing on dessert? What if the blessing is shakol? Maybe that you don't make a blessing on. And when he said, I couldn't believe I was hearing this conversation unfold.
Maybe it was the first dessert they ever ate.
What?
Maybe it was the first dessert they ever ate.
Maybe. Nitbarem, he says, I understood. What were they in doubt about? Shesvekam, hu sheberkat shakol shonehim beberkat ha'etz ha'adama, v'kol echad herech charifut shel heaven. He said, everyone was trying to prove their ignorance by arguing this matter that they had no idea about. They were trying to say that a shakol dessert is different than a fruit dessert or a different kind of dessert. So when I told them that in the Halacha it says you have to make a blessing on dessert, they started talking to each other out loud. So what's the custom? Do we have a blessing? Do we make a blessing or do we not make a blessing? What's our custom? So mean. He said, and everyone spat out whatever it is that he swallowed. As amalti lahem, so I told them that from now on I have an idea. Nishkach mikol sivrei hashas v'ashulchan aruch. Let's forget about a whole Talmud and the Shulchan Aruch. Let's get rid of all those books. We don't need them on the bookshelf. V'ichtevu rak sefer echad. We're going to only write one book. V'shmo, and the name of the book, yikaru lo Sefer HaMinhagim. We'll call it the Book of the Customs. V'rachmana litzlan. It says, God forbid that we should reach such a situation where the Shas and the Shulchan Aruch are irrelevant, and customs are what dictate our Judaism. Al ken tafuk Torah. The Torah will disappear because of such ways. Uminhagei am ha'aretz yikaru Torah. He said, now they're going to call the customs of ignoramuses minhagim, customs. V'alehem tisov ha'horah. And now we're going to come to the ignoramuses, so they should paskin halacha for us. V'alpiyah hafchu ha'kara. And they're going to turn all the tables over on us. V'artzua lehem u'torah. And they're going to get rid of all the halachot. La'avor ala Torah b'srira. And they're going to, with ego and confidence, they're going to get rid of the whole Torah because of their customs. And then he starts a list of how many things people don't follow according to Halacha because of their customs. Not the place for this class, we could do it one time together. But, what do you think about these two letters we just read?
He does not like baseless minhag.
He does not like baseless minhagim, that's true. We'll give that away.
No, it's like, well, we've had conversations about the Acharonim and the Rishonim, and the closer you get to the time that the Talmud was written, the more closer to the source and the more clear that the decisions were made.
Absolutely. I just bought a Musar book now for one of the Rishonim. I was reading it. I told my wife, I love this stuff. I love it because whenever I read stuff from later authorities, I always have to be like on my tippy toes. Are they inventing new ideas? Are there new influences in their writings, or is this original Jewish Torah? So when you read a book from the Rambam,
Psychology or it's
right, or is it Halacha? When you read something from the Rambam, from Rabbi Yonah, from Rabbi Huda Chassid, or you're from Rashi, you don't ever wonder like, maybe they were influenced by. You don't. Not that God forbid I suspect any other rabbis of that, but it's true. The later you go in Jewish thought, it used to be we were much more similar to each other. Even in the Rishonim, when we argued from different countries, they were much more similar. The opinions, philosophies, understandings of Judaism, commentaries on the Torah, and then things kind of branch out to the point where today, it's like, what makes you, if someone's become observant, they can't just, learn Tanakh and Talmud and Shulchan Aruch and go to Minyan 3 times a day and put on tefillin. They have to decide which denomination they want to belong to. Do I go to the mikveh every day? Do I go to the mikveh only at Shabbat? Do I go to the mikveh before Yom Kippur? Do I grow a beard? Do I not grow a beard? Do I wear this kind of hat? Do I wear this kind of coat? It's like none of that has anything to do with Judaism. Why are you so stuck on these things? Because there is no pure, let's just be Jewish kind of Torah floating around. You have to decide your denomination. And those denominations are very far apart from each other. And they get very confusing, and there's a lot of pressure which group you want to belong to or not belong to.
Dishonesty about it in terms of getting Balei Tshuva. They don't tell you about other ways or say, here's how we do it, here's how they do it. It's just like, this is Judaism, how you do it.
I once spoke to a person who was involved in Jewish outreach. I told him I have a lot of respect for people involved in Jewish outreach. To connect people to Hashem. I mean, that's a beautiful job. I said, but I don't agree with your dishonesty. So, I'm always angry at the Christian missionaries because they tell people, oh, we believe in God, we believe in the Torah, until you're so deep in, then you realize that what they believe in is a whole perversion of the truth. I said, you don't let people know that you represent a fringe, extreme, fanatic group within Judaism. You don't present yourself as you present yourself as mainstream Orthodox Judaism, which you're not. I said, you present a very specific breed of Orthodox Judaism that is on the fringe of Orthodoxy, and you should be much more honest with people because you get them involved in something that they're not aware what they're getting involved in.
You have to trust people's intelligence, that you give them real things that they'll be able to do something with it.
Absolutely.
That's why fringes have so much importance in Judaism.
That's why fringes. I'll tell you, even when I meet people that are becoming newly observant or whatever it is, I am very careful. Like someone asked me once, so do I make the blessing before I wash my hands or after I wash my hands? I told them, you make the blessing after you wash their hands. And somebody was standing next to me, he's like, Rabbi, you never tell people. You tell people that if they make the blessing after they wash their hands, that they're saying God's name in vain. I said, but this person is not at the point right now. First, let them get mainstream, whatever I want to call it. And then allow them to make decisions for themselves. You have to be honest with people. You have to know, this is not the mainstream approach. I believe it's the correct approach. You're allowed to believe that your group is the correct approach, but don't sell it as the only approach or the mainstream approach. It takes a little bit of intellectual honesty, which not everyone has. What else do you see from Rabbi Abadi's literature? How are many things you hear that are minhagim? Where do they actually come from?
It's like the Hasidim who duck when they reach the
The bima, because of the pipe that was in the wall.
And then
Because why?
So there was a certain group of Jews that came up from Europe, and they had a custom whenever you walk by the Aron Kodesh, you duck.
You duck.
And they thought it was bowing down with Aron Kodesh.
oh,
Until they
I
went to the Stiebel in Europe, and they saw there was a pipe coming out of the wall. And that's why they had to duck. There are such customs, right?
Yeah.
And it's not here to make light of minhagim. I'll say there are times, for example, when you make minhagim, you're not sure. There are two valid approaches to Halacha, and you're not sure which one to side with. And that's when minhagim have importance. So you say, okay, so I'm going to go with what my father did. For example, all the sidurim in the world are good and holy. So you're not sure which sidur you should use, unless you feel that there's a compelling reason to use a different sidur than the one your parents used. So use the one that your parents used, because that's the one that you have a tradition. It's a masar. There's a value to that, but not enough to not get rid of other people's traditions because of your tradition. It's a balance.
Aren't you supposed to take the siddur that's in your show?
It's also discussion in the poskim, not necessarily.
because it leads to some difficulties of staying in tune with what's going on. People are.
Right. Oh, so if it's easier for you, then obviously, listen, Hashem understands every nusach. That's the bottom line. I'll tell you, if you are honest with yourself about the Siddur evolved many, many times over. The Sfaradim who think they're using a Sephardic Siddur today, they're using a Siddur that Rabbi Ovadia Yosef wrote not so long ago. And the ones who have a Siddur from before, it's a Siddur that Ben Ish Chai wrote not so long ago. And the ones that have a Siddur, the older than that, it's a Siddur that Rizal wrote not so long ago. And the ones before that, you can go like, there's all kinds of, but it's real Sephardic. Nothing really is real Sephardic, because every Sephardic person, every different country, had a different Siddur based on the rabbi of the community, and the song they sing in the community. The same thing with Ashkenazim. The art scroll in Nusach Ashkenaz is the biggest bluff that art scroll sold the Jewish community. In Ashkenaz, just like Sephardic countries, like we have a Moroccan Siddur, and a Yemenite Siddur, and an Iraqi Siddur, and a Persian Siddur. There were a Galicianer Siddur, and a Hungarian Siddur, and a Polish Siddur, and a Lithuanian Siddur, and a Russian Siddur, and a French Siddur. And so art scroll, listen, what are you going to do? You have to sell a Siddur that's universal. So pretty much there became a standardized Nusach Ashkenaz. Like the Hasidim, they think they have Nusach Sfard. And I've seen, for example, my wife's Siddur Nusach Sfard. It's not the same as the Breslov Siddur Nusach Sfard. It's not the same as the one I used to have, which was the Munkach Nusach Sfard. They're all different. They're mostly similar. So the Siddurim are about 90% similar. And the 10% differences, I don't think Hashem really cares which way you go, and as long as you're using it.
What about decisions of things like taking out, the famous line in the Kaddish, the Mishiche, right?
It was a mistake.
It was a mistake?
Mistake.
And it becomes a minhag.
The fact that Ashkenazim don't have V'yatzmach Purkanei V'karem Shechei, all the old Siddurim had V'yatzmach Purkanei V'karem Shechei. Additionally, every group of Jews in the world, except for the Ashkenazim, and even in Ashkenazim, you have Jews like the Hasidim who had V'yatzmach Purkanei V'karem Shechei, the Sfaradim, the Temanim, that all have it. So it's obvious that here it's a mistake. So it's not that you can't continue that custom; it's the custom. But when someone else wants to come and say V'yatzmach Purkanei V'karem Shechei, you shouldn't scream at them.
Happened to me in Santa Fe.
I was once taken down from the bima as a chazan.
For doing that?
I said V'yatzmach Purkanei V'karem Shechei. And when I tried to explain myself to the rabbis, the rabbi was a bigger ignoramus than the guy who took me down from the bima.
So if you're saying the Kaddish and you leave out that because you have an Ashkenazic Siddur,
You're not doing anything wrong.
but in the Sephardic service you can say your own Kaddish without the words?
Yeah, you're just going to get confused. But yeah, technically.
You probably get confused anyways.
There's nothing wrong with pausing. I've seen people pause and then continue.
Yeah.
Or you can have your own Siddur there for when you say the Kaddish you're used to and say that.
But
Yeah.
when you look at the Talmud and text and the 5 amenim that have to be said in the beginning,
Oh.
it's very simple that those... So what happens? Ashkenazim, they say also brichu at the end, right?
Right.
That's also... When the Talmud says amen, the Rambam says amen, the Shulchan says amen. So where did brichu come from? So I'm not going to tell them to get rid of the custom. There's a reason why this custom came. It's not a new custom. But if you see the Hasidim say amen, and the Sfaradim say amen, and the Yemenites say amen, so at the end of the day, you're going to wonder, is this a uniquely... And it's a small community's custom. The Ashkenazim are a big population, but they're not the majority of... If you put the Hasidim and the Sfaradim and the Yemenites together, you already... Especially since in Israel, most Ashkenazim also say amen. Not brichu. You get yourself in an interesting situation.
Amen.
Brichu. So, let's open up the Halacha Barab. You can hold on to these papers, fold them up, put them in your books. You will need them one day.